Okay, I'm going to describe a project today, a short URL project that we run at UT Chattanooga and have been running since around 2013, but the project has kind of evolved over time. So I'll really give you a little history of the project along with actually it's a complete public repository, so you'll be able to access that on GitHub. I'm Chris Gilligan, Senior Web Designer at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and I'm happy to be here today. This is my third Drupal camp in Chattanooga, I think, and I'm also I'm a fan of the Asheville Drupal camp, and hope to see folks at the DrupalCon in Atlanta coming up. But this is not a Drupal. This is not a Drupal project. This is just a basic PHP project. YOURLs is a PHP application which provides shortcut URLs, and I'll give you some rationale behind why you would want to use a shortcut URL app in this presentation. And so YOURLs and me, I've known about YOURLs a little bit longer than 2013, but 2013 was the first time that I ever got a chance to use it. And we used it in a higher education setting at UT Chattanooga, which is a mid-sized metro university. We're talking about, fairly high traffic public websites and also thousands and thousands of public pages, many of which need a quicker way to get to than the long department name and college name in a huge URL. So YOURLs and you. Who's going to benefit from this session? I'd say if you're starting a new shortcut URL project and you're adept at PHP, this would be a good place to start. And you'll get some best practices, maybe not the most cutting edge, but just some ways to use the project and the plugins that are available for it. And then I'll also give you tips on a custom theme or a theme that you can customize, and useful plugins, and then some information about authentication if you want to open your project up to other users. And what can you gain? I'll talk a little bit about source control management, source code management with versioning and releases for your app, and talk about how to deal with multiple environments, dev, test, and production, and just a little bit about software package management that can be used for this app, and then give you a tip about simple deployments. YOURLs is a project that's pretty mature and doesn't really change much, basically only gets security updates from time to time, but it does have a pretty wide user base. So it's not a dead project, but it's a mature project that doesn't change because it's a relatively simple app. Okay, so more about YOURLs and you. What can it give you? What can this project example give you? It'll give you branded front and back ends, branded shortcut URLs, branded QR codes with a logo in the middle. I'll talk a little bit about single sign-on and how we handle that, and a little about user levels and permissions. You might want to give basic users, you might want to give unauthenticated users no access to the app at all. You might want to give basic users, like in our example, a student or a teacher, you might want to give them the ability to create their own URLs. Other permissions that you could give would be to edit your own or others' URLs, and then you might want to give super admins the ability to see everybody's URLs and delete those that might be offensive or malicious. And also you might want to let users manage their own data so they can delete and edit their own URLs. So YOURLs, kind of like the WordPress, a WordPress app. It's got a very low point of entry. It's not quite as easy to set up as WordPress, but it's very easy. It's just a basic PHP app. And it has a decent ecosystem of plugins. I'm just going to describe a very few, a limited set of plugins with really specific uses for our use case. However, it's a PHP app, so it's got a high probability of mistakes. Anybody who's an admin can activate, deactivate plugins. So you want to think about user roles, like the basic user. The basic user role in YOURLs as it comes out of the box is an administrator with access to create everything, turn on plugins, and that sort of stuff. So you've really got to use authentication and a role management plugin to get different levels of user access. And then if you're just deploying PHP like a novice developer would, which would be maybe just editing files directly on a server, that can be problematic. So we'll talk a little bit about how to use Git to manage this project. And then also, if you're not managing software correctly, if you're not using Git, you don't have any project history for any customization that you've done. And Git and GitHub can be really helpful in terms of documentation, and then looking back at all the commits that have been done over time, and figuring out why something was done a certain way, or who did something, who made a change that can give you some advice on why they did that, and that sort of stuff. And then also, if you're not managing in Git, you don't really have any version history for the versions of releases that were done and the deployments that were done. Okay, what won't you get from this session? You won't get the best practices. This is not the most modern software, and I'm not the best developer, but this is something that I was able to build and deploy for a large organization, and it works pretty well for our uses. This is a homegrown project, and it uses all open source. There's no proprietary stuff here. I'll even give you access to the whole project with all the plugins, and nothing secret, but you will see how the app was set up for our use case. And we'll show us an example of a simple YOURLs application that you could deploy to on-premises hosting in LampStack or Nginx LampStack. Okay, so 2013, we were in an older content management system that really didn't have a lot of plugins to it. It was a proprietary content management system, but we deployed in PHP. So what we used YOURLs for at that point was on our main utc.edu domain. We would use that for shortcuts, utc.edu/whatever you want, that goes to a much longer URL. And we also used it for redirects from older legacy URLs that needed to be accounted for. So it was basically our redirect system. If you're familiar with Drupal, Drupal has redirect pretty much built in, and it's used for alias URLs and that sort of stuff, in addition to shortcut marketing type URLs. But at that point, we had it open to admins only, so the only shortcut URLs that got created were administered and created by admins. The general public couldn't create shortcuts to their own stuff, and it didn't have any public user interface or a user interface that authenticated users could get to. And it was also like in our top level Nginx path, so it could be utc.edu, which was really serving www.utc.edu, but it could be any shortcut at that level of the domain. 2020-ish to now, actually more like that 2020 is not quite correct. It's more like 2023, late 2023 to now. What it is now is a vanity URL shortener, so it lives at go.utc.edu. If you try to go to go.utc.edu, you're going to be asked to authenticate. You're not, unless you have go.utc.edu and the link, the shortcut link, it's not going to be an app that you could use. So the general public doesn't get any access to it, but students, faculty, and staff, because they have a organization level login and user ID, they can get to it and they can actually manage their own URLs. So we let all authenticated users create and manage their own URLs, shortcut URLs. The administration side of things, this is what it looks like for a top-level administrator, but it's not presenting all of the permissions that you could possibly have, because we don't really want even top-level administrators to enable and disable plugins that might mess up the functionality of the app. Yeah, basically you've got access to look at, edit, and a super admin could also delete URLs. We've never really had the occasion to delete a URL, but it's there, and we take a weekly look at this just to see which URLs have been created, and if there was anything that looked malicious or distasteful, we might delete it. But there is a record of which user created it, so we can at least police things that way. So what are some of the use cases for short URLs? Marketing is the easiest one to think of, and you need shortcuts for print. Like we have a quarterly magazine or a semester-wide magazine that goes out, and they use shortcut URLs in there for maybe there's some video content that an interview of a subject that was in one of the magazine stories has done. So they need a shortcut URL for that. Another thing that you can use it for is Google Analytics and campaign parameters that are tacked onto a long link. You don't really want to have a gigantic link that's, super long and has a bunch of Google campaign specific parameters in it. You don't really want to print that, and nobody's going to be able to type that out, so obviously that's another great use for a shortcut link. And then also something that YourLs can provide with a plugin is branded QR codes. And the use case for that was the pandemic, right? QR codes were kind of like poo-pooed for a while from web developers, but then when the pandemic came out, everybody needed a QR code so that they could, in a video presentation, allow people to hit a shortcut URL that then goes to a long URL or an asset. And so branded QR codes were also often requested from our marketing folks, and that required the marketing folks, the designers in the marketing department, to know where to go to safely create a QR code that would point to a URL, and then they would need to also drop a logo into it. And so YourLs, there's a plugin for it that creates that. And so what the branded QR codes, they're branded, they have a Chattanooga logo on them, but it also gives the ability for anybody in the university to create a branded QR code, and it's become pretty standardized, and the marketing folks like it because they can go right to a UTC app, create it, and have a consistent look for every one of them. So other ways that that YOURLs is getting used at UT Chattanooga are in an academic setting. Professors are really liking it for when they create their syllabus. They can have short links to their materials, and they can, in their presentations during class, they can have a QR code that they can put in their presentation to help students find materials. Students are also using it for materials and websites related to their clubs, and it's just an easy way for them to do that sort of stuff. QR codes and handouts and presentations are just super helpful for everybody in the organization. Okay, so if you're a dev and you want to create a shortcut URL application, you're probably going to want to brand it, and there's a really nice, super basic Bootstrap 5 theme that provides a front end and a back end, and then also has like Node.js hooked in for browser sync and that sort of stuff that a theme developer would want. So Sleeky is the name of that. It's fairly easy to find on the internet. Slinky.flintez.com. And the front end compiler is just basic Node Sass, and the back end is Gulp Sass. So if you don't know anything about theming or Node.js or anything like that, it's a nice little intro to that because it's already set up in the theme. And suggested plugins for authentication, we use SAML, and so this YOURLs SAML plugin is excellent for that. For scoping out roles and permissions, Auth Manager Plus is the plugin for that. Sean's QR code. And another useful one is a plugin that fixes YouTube titles, because by default, a YouTube title or a YouTube URL doesn't reveal the title. It goes through some authentication step first to see if somebody's logged into YouTube, but there is like a really easy way to bypass that with a plugin, so that it'll actually fetch the title, and that title will be visible if you've created some links and you look at the admin side of things. It'll instead of saying youtube.com/some authentication path, it'll show the full path on the title. And then, as I described, this whole project, the entire project, is open to the public. Why? Well, I started this project the previous summer, and started it with some student web developers, and so I used it as a project to kind of onboard them to learning how to use Git and learning how to use GitHub, and then also because the project was on GitHub and they were making contributions, they got a few little green boxes on their profile that showed that they had some activity and could point back to the commits that they had made, so that it was a nice thing for their resume. Okay, things to know. If you're going to be using SAML for authentication, the easiest way to set that up is by using some Apache configuration. And so if like this project uses Lando as the local development environment, and so in order to test SAML authentication with that local environment, we needed to add a little bit of extra configuration for the app server to call some Apache configuration. This is a little look at some of the users and some of the roles that the users have. I guess we have 4 levels of user, other than anonymous users who don't get any access. They get access to be able to punch in a shortcut URL and go to that URL, but that's the only public access. And so using Auth Manager Plus, you can set up roles and access permissions. And branded QR codes, I talked a little bit about that before, the use cases for that, and the fact that the marketing department loves the fact that they can point users to an application where they can create their own. Another thing that might be super useful for you, and this presentation has gone very quickly, so I'm already towards the end of it, but one use case that we had before we started this newer project was to export all of the thousands of redirects that we had previously in YOURLs. There's a plugin that you can use to export to CSV. That's this one that I've got listed here. And it was really useful to be able to import on the older system that we were using. It was nice to be able to import, but export became important because we needed to export all of those URLs that used to be in the old system and add those as Drupal redirects when we migrated to the Drupal project. Okay, thanks. I can just exit out of here, and you can see this is the front end form. This is what the front end form looks like. Anybody who can authenticate at utc.edu can go here. They can create their shortcuts.
They have to request an account, right? Or you have to.
Everybody can do this.
Oh.
Students can do this. Not many students have used it. We advertise it as a service. Not many students have used it. Just a few, but professors are starting to use it pretty frequently.
So anybody who is authenticated with SAML goes into the contributor role?
Yeah, they get access to this front-end form. Like an anonymous user doesn't get access to this front-end form. They'll be sent directly to authentication in that.
How often does SAML, I guess when a new account gets created, how often does it check that?
How often does what check what?
Do you ever have the issue where somebody created a new account and they cannot access this yet because it hasn't been synced or why not?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
yeah, as soon as they can authenticate, they can get to this. So it's kind of, it's advertised as a service, and we've got instructions about how to use it on our the portal that we use for service tickets and so forth. That's kind of like a catalog of IT services. We check it pretty much weekly, just to see like how many URLs have been created and who's creating them for what purposes, and haven't seen any malicious activity on it. But there's always the potential for that. The tiny bits of security that we have in front of this are reCAPTCHA for the form. And SAML for account authentication, but that's about it. Okay, any more questions?
Have you had any conflicts with people requesting the same URL and then wanting to have that because everybody can be at the root?
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. The ones where the places where we have conflicts with that are at the main level, which is handled in Drupal redirects, and that's only available to Drupal administrators and developers. So we can if somebody wants a utc.edu/shortcut URL, sure, we can do that for them. And we will do that for them, but the criteria for that is more like, is this a URL that's going to be relatively permanent? And what's the use case? If it's more of like a short-term marketing or event publicity type URL, then we point them towards go.utc.edu. And then if they've created a shortcut URL that's specific to an event that they hold maybe yearly, they can go back and edit that same URL again. Or an instructor who updates their materials and uploads a new PDF file for their course, they can go and manage that shortcut URL as well. So different use cases. It's kind of like, does it meet a certain criteria? If it's just for like a word of mouth or QR code or maybe a radio advertisement, we point them towards go.utc.edu so that they can manage it themselves. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, shortest presentation at the whole conference, so that's it. Let's go have fun.
Hey.